I thought going to my sister's wedding would bring us closer. I booked my flight early, confirmed my room months in advance, and told myself this time would be different. But when I arrived, I learned something quietly devastating. My room was gone. Given to someone more important. And no one thought to tell me. What hurt most wasn't the inconvenience. It was how easily my place was erased, and how calmly my mother defended it. Because in that moment, I realized this wasn't about a wedding. It was about where I stood in my own family. And once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. I should have known something was wrong the moment my mother said it out loud. You really should have told us earlier if you needed a room. Her tone wasn't angry. It wasn't apologetic either. It was calm, almost bored, like she was correcting a minor mistake on a grocery list. I stood frozen in the lobby of a secluded lakeside resort, my small rolling suitcase beside me, my fingers gripping the handle so tightly they had gone numb. The air smelled like fresh pine and expensive candles. Through the massive glass windows, the mountains of northern Montana stretched endlessly into the distance, breathtaking, silent, indifferent. We gave your room to Daniel, she continued. He's one of the groom's investors. Very important. You understand. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. Because I had confirmed that room 3 months ago. Because I had sent the deposit myself. Because I had planned this trip carefully, down to the last dollar, working extra shifts just to afford it. Mom, I said finally, forcing my voice to stay steady, I confirmed my reservation in March. You even forwarded me the email. She adjusted the silk scarf around her neck, a designer brand, a gift from my sister, no doubt. Plans change, she said. Daniel flew in from San Francisco just for the wedding. His connections could do wonders for your sister's future. This isn't personal. But it was. It always was. My name is Elena Parker. I was 30 years old, standing in a luxury resort I technically wasn't allowed to stay in, realizing, once again, that I ranked somewhere below strangers when it came to my own family. I had spent my entire life being the easy daughter. The quiet one. The reliable one. The one who never asked for much because asking usually led to disappointment. I worked as a server at a small cafe outside Spokane, covering double shifts, smiling through exhaustion, saving every spare dollar just to survive. But that wasn't who I really was, not entirely. Late at night, when the world finally went quiet, I wrote. I wrote stories about women who stopped shrinking themselves. Women who walked away from places they weren't valued. Women who chose themselves when no one else would. I had self-published a few novels under a pen name. They hadn't made me rich. They hadn't made me famous. But they were mine. Proof that I existed beyond the role my family had assigned me. My younger sister, Claire, was getting married to Ethan Brooks, the son of a well-known real estate developer. This wedding wasn't just a celebration, it was a strategic alliance. Every guest, every detail, every seat assignment mattered. And I didn't. So where am I supposed to stay? I asked quietly. My mother didn't hesitate. There's a roadside lodge about half an hour down the mountain, she said. It's not ideal, but it should be fine for someone in your position. Someone in my position. Someone without status. Without influence. Without a name worth protecting. The ceremony starts at 2 tomorrow, she added, already turning away. Claire wants family photos at 1. Don't be late. And please wear something appropriate. That black dress you wore last Christmas looked cheap. Then she walked off, heels clicking sharply against the polished stone floor, never once looking back. I stood there long after she disappeared into the crowd of planners and florists and well-dressed guests. The familiar ache settled deep in my chest, the kind that comes from years of being overlooked, dismissed, quietly erased. At the front desk, the receptionist gave me a sympathetic look. I'm really sorry, she whispered. Your mother insisted this morning. It's fine, I said, though my voice sounded hollow even to me. Could you write down the address of that lodge? She slid the paper across the counter and hesitated before adding softly. For what it's worth, you deserve better than this. I thanked her and stepped outside into the cold mountain air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. It was stunning, almost painfully so. Like the world was reminding me how beautiful things could be, even when your heart was quietly breaking. I didn't know it yet, but this was the moment everything began to change. The roadside lodge was exactly what my mother had described. Functional. Forgettable. Barely clean. The heater rattled all night, and the thin curtains did nothing to block the early morning light. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the conversation in the resort lobby, searching for some version of it that hurt less. There wasn't one. The next morning, I arrived back at the resort just before noon. The place looked different in daylight, polished, busy, alive with celebration. White flowers lined the walkways. A string quartet played softly near the terrace. Guests laughed as if nothing in the world could possibly be wrong. I walked through it all like a ghost. In the bridal suite, Claire was already surrounded by bridesmaids, hairstylists, and makeup artists. When she saw me, she froze for half a second, just long enough to tell me she hadn't expected me to show up yet. "You made it," she said finally, her smile tight. "Yes," I replied. "I did." Her eyes flicked briefly to my dress, simple, elegant, something I'd chosen carefully. "Good," she said. "Just try to stay out of the way until the photos." "Out of the way." I nodded and stepped back, letting the room close around her again. During the family photo session, the message became clearer. Cousins were placed carefully. In-laws were adjusted with precision. Even distant relatives were given specific spots. When it came time for me, the photographer hesitated. "Oh," he said, glancing at my mother. "Where should she go?" My mother didn't even look at me. "Off to the side," she said. "We'll do immediate family first." I waited. The photos continued. Bride and groom. Parents. Parents with investors. Parents with investors' families. No one called my name. After 15 minutes, I quietly stepped back. No one noticed. At the reception, the seating chart confirmed what I already knew. My table was in the far corner of the room, near the service door, next to people I didn't recognize. I later learned they were business associates of the groom's father, men who spoke loudly about stock prices and barely acknowledged me. Claire never came by. My mother passed my table once, paused briefly, and leaned in. "Try not to look upset," she whispered. "People are watching." That was when something inside me finally cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just, completely. I smiled for the rest of the evening. I clapped at the right moments. Laughed when others laughed. Kept my head down and my emotions contained. But I knew. This wasn't carelessness. It wasn't stress. It was a pattern. And sitting there, surrounded by strangers at my own sister's wedding, I understood a painful truth. I wasn't forgotten. I was intentionally minimized. And once you see that clearly, pretending otherwise becomes impossible. The reception ended late. People lingered, laughing, drinking, celebrating a future that wasn't mine. I slipped out quietly. No goodbye hugs. No family photos. No one noticed when I left the ballroom and stepped into the cold night air. The lodge was dark when I returned. The parking lot was empty, the silence heavy. I sat on the edge of the bed without turning on the lights, still wearing the dress I had been told to choose more carefully. That was when my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "Did you leave already?" Claire was asking where you went. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "Yes. I'm tired." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "You shouldn't take things so personally, Elena. Today wasn't about you." I set the phone face down. Because that was the problem. It never was. The next morning, I woke early and drove away from the lodge before sunrise. The mountains faded behind me as the road curved downward, self-service cutting in and out. With every mile, my chest felt lighter. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I stopped at a small cafe in a town I'd never visited before. I ordered coffee, opened my laptop, and did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote. Not fiction. Not fantasy. The truth. I wrote about the lobby. The room that disappeared. The seating chart. The quiet humiliation dressed up as logistics. Words poured out faster than I could control them. For the first time, I didn't soften the story to protect anyone. By noon, I had posted the essay online under my real name. No filters. No aliases. No disclaimers. Just facts. I didn't send the link to my family. I didn't need to. By the time I reached my apartment that evening, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Texts. Missed calls. Voicemails stacking on top of each other. From my mother. From Claire. From relatives who suddenly remembered I existed. I didn't answer. Because for the first time, silence felt like a choice, not a punishment. That night, I packed a small suitcase. Not to run. To leave intentionally. I booked a one-way ticket to a city where no one knew my last name or my role in anyone else's life. As I zipped the bag closed, I felt something unfamiliar but steady settle in my chest. Peace. They thought I had simply gone home early. They had no idea I was already gone. I landed in Portland just after dusk. The city felt unfamiliar in the best way, anonymous, indifferent, free. I checked into a small apartment I'd found online that morning. It wasn't permanent. It didn't need to be. It was mine. The next day, I turned my phone back on. The notifications flooded in. Missed calls from my mother. Long messages from Claire. Voicemails from relatives I barely spoke to anymore. The tone had changed. Concern replaced irritation. Confusion replaced certainty. Where are you? Are you okay? This has gone too far. I didn't respond. Instead, I found a cafe near the river, opened my laptop, and continued writing. What had started as an essay turned into something larger, a series of reflections on family dynamics, silence, and the cost of always being understanding. Within days, the post spread. People I'd never met left comments. I thought this only happened in my family. I've been the invisible sibling too. Thank you for saying this out loud. Then the backlash started. A message from my mother arrived late one night. You embarrassed us. This should have stayed private. I read it once. Then I closed the app. Because privacy had only ever been used to protect their behavior, never my feelings. A week later, Claire sent a long email. She said she hadn't meant to hurt me. She said weddings were stressful. She said I was being dramatic. She didn't say she was sorry. That told me everything. I responded with one sentence. I needed space. Please respect that. She didn't reply. But the calls slowed. The demands softened. Because for the first time, they couldn't reach me easily. And something unexpected happened in the quiet that followed. I started sleeping through the night. I walked the city without checking my phone. I ate alone without feeling lonely. I made plans without explaining them to anyone. I wasn't hiding. I was finally living without permission. And I realized something important. They weren't upset because they missed me. They were upset because they had lost access. I stayed in Portland longer than I planned. What was supposed to be temporary slowly became intentional. I found a small studio with tall windows and uneven wooden floors. Nothing fancy. But every corner of it felt honest. I paid the deposit myself. Signed the lease alone. No one questioned my decisions. No one needed convincing. My family didn't show up at my door. Instead, weeks later, an email arrived from my mother. She wrote that things had been misunderstood. That emotions had been high. That I should consider being the bigger person. She didn't mention the room. Or the seating chart. Or the words she'd used. I didn't reply. Claire reached out once more after that. She said married life had been overwhelming. That she hoped we could move forward. Again, no apology. I closed the message. Because moving forward without accountability is just another form of erasure. Over time, the noise faded. The calls stopped. The emails slowed. The pressure lifted. And in the quiet, I began to see my life clearly. I wasn't difficult. I wasn't sensitive. I wasn't dramatic. I had simply outgrown the role they needed me to play. I kept writing. Not to explain myself. Not to justify my absence. But to remind myself, and others, that choosing distance can be an act of self-respect. Sometimes people don't notice your worth until you remove your presence. And sometimes, even then, they never do. But that no longer defines you. I didn't disappear to punish anyone. I disappeared to save myself. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for choosing peace.